Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today we're going to be taking an in-depth look at Tropical Cyclone Megan as she approaches landfall on Centre Island and the Northern Territory. There's also some pretty significant impacts expected for far northern Queensland, so all of that plus more in today's weather forecast. If you haven't already, then please consider subscribing and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. Taking a look at the storm right now, you can see she's moving quite close to landfall at this time. The centre of the storm located right over the top of Mululua on the Centre Island outside of Burralula right now. Small indigenous community up there. Centre Island itself already receiving winds of around 93 kilometres an hour, gusting to 130 kilometres an hour. Full-blown Category 2 or 3 strength cyclone conditions are occurring there. The storm hasn't intensified quite as much as what the forecast model suggested overnight, but it is still approaching Category 4 status at this time and is expected to come ashore with peak winds of 220 kilometres an hour as per the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast sometime later today. It is already starting to make landfall at this time. It's a very slow moving storm, but yeah, it is definitely in the process of making landfall now and is probably at peak intensity at this time at around 9 a.m. local time for the Northern Territory and Queensland area. Certainly a very, very dangerous cyclone, that's for sure. Already starting to penetrate the Northern Territory coastline with cyclone winds approaching Burralula and full-blown severe tropical cyclone conditions for Mulua at this time. And if we were to take a look at the radar imagery real quick, you can see a lot of rainfall streaming in around Mornington Island from thunderstorms, inflow thunderstorms, which is what we'll also talk about in this video because they are a significant threat, especially to far northern Queensland. We've also got a lot of rainfall occurring around the tropical cyclone. Of course, Centre Island has already received 113 millimetres of rainfall overnight, and they're likely going to be receiving more throughout today. In fact, probably another 300 millimeters more. And you can see here the very ill-defined eye wall on the satellite, on the radar imagery, and it is already starting to come ashore at this time. It is making landfall on the Northern Territory at this time, and it'll probably be in the next few hours that we see this tropical cyclone come ashore over the Northern Territory. The Bureau of Meteorology, I'm aware, is saying that this is going to be making landfall at around 8 p.m. local time. That's way off. As you can see on the radar imagery, it is currently in the process of making landfall on the Northern Territory, but because of its very slow forward motion, it will take a few hours for this system to properly make landfall. And unfortunately for the people that want to see the maximum winds in this eye wall, the Centre Island weather station is not quite in the eye wall of this system right now, but it looks like they could be in the eye wall in the coming couple of minutes to maybe half an hour or so. So stay on top of the Centre Island weather observations because it looks like they're about to get some very, very nasty wind speeds. We're talking up towards 170 kilometres an hour from the south. This is a very strong tropical cyclone, that's for sure. Now, as I said yesterday, it's not so much about the forecast, it's kind of about the now for this tropical cyclone, but we will still take a look at the rainfall forecast for this tropical cyclone. It doesn't look like the Eastern Relief wants to give us a rainfall forecast, but we will use the Access G3 model here. You can see the tropical cyclone housing an awful lot of rainfall as it comes ashore. The Access is actually a pretty unreliable model by the looks of things in terms of peak rainfall and also the track of the tropical cyclone, but it is pretty accurate in the sense that we can be expecting up to 200 millimeters to fall every 3 hours for the landfall areas that are going to be receiving the direct hit from this tropical cyclone. It's going to be a very wet system. I mean, obviously with the amount of thunderstorm activity, i.e. convection that we've seen blow up with this tropical cyclone, there is going to be a lot of rainfall falling on the outside of this system, especially anywhere sort of towards the north of the storm center. They're going to be receiving an absolute drenching. And if we were to cross-reference that with a peak amount of rainfall accumulation, we'll use the GFS for this one here, but over the next 3 days we can be expecting accumulations approaching 300 millimeters as this system makes landfall on top of the already 1 to 200 millimeters that some areas have already picked up. So an awful lot of rainfall is expected to come ashore with this tropical cyclone as it makes landfall, and it's going to saturate communities around Burralula and Robinson River and so forth. They're going to be receiving some very significant flooding up there. It's going to be very, very dangerous, that's for sure. And it's likely that we see some of these town sites cut off from the Northern Territory infrastructure systems for days, maybe even a week at a time. So if you haven't already up there, it is definitely way too late to prepare at this time. But make sure if you can just get your working radio in order if you've got time to do that, especially if you are further inland away from the tropical cyclone's wrath as it comes ashore, then that is highly advisable because that's kind of the only way that you're going to get information after the power and the electricity fails up here. And yeah, yeah, hopefully everyone's got a backup generator up here. They're generally pretty good at preparing for tropical cyclones in the Northern Territory. They go through this stuff every couple of years, but this one's certainly quite a strong one, the strongest since, I believe, Cyclone Trevor of 2019. So nothing absolutely insane or crazy that we're seeing here, but still a Category 3, it is nothing to be messing around with, and it still has the potential to intensify even more from where it is right now, but I don't think that that is going to happen. We'll just briefly take a look at the satellite imagery once again. I don't feel that I have explained it in depth enough, but just taking a look at the system right now, there is a little, it's very hard to see on this imagery here. If we were to take a look at the blue imagery actually from Windy, you can see there's just this little crevice where it's a little bit lighter than the very deep greys that we're seeing on the northern side of the system. That is where the eye of the system is. That's where the center of the storm is, and you can see it is really trying to squeeze out an eye at this time. It's not doing a very good job, and it's probably not going to have enough time to do that before it gets ashore, but it is definitely trying to get itself out an eye at this time, and yeah, it is looking very impressive on the satellite imagery. We're definitely looking at a Category 3 strength tropical cyclone at this point, probably even something a little bit stronger than that, and it is going to blast through Borroloola and Robinson River later today. I reckon Borroloola will start to receive full-blown cyclone conditions from when this video gets released, and Robinson River maybe at around 12 or 1 p.m. local time. Robinson River shouldn't cop it too bad, but Borroloola definitely. For people in Borroloola, you're expecting Category 3 strength conditions to probably hold up for around 6 to 8 hours. This is going to be a brutal and a long-lasting tropical cyclone as well, and you can expect some pretty significant property damage as this system blows through. Certainly a very significant one, that's for sure. I mean, Centre Island has been under full-blown cyclone conditions for 24 hours now, and they've probably been under full-blown severe tropical cyclone conditions for the past maybe 6 or 8 hours. They have had a very, very rough run, and yeah, winds definitely have been, they've really been up there. They're really starting to climb at this time right now, and I'd love to see some wind gust reports from the Centre Island Observation Centre, but I would say that we're going to be seeing wind gusts probably approaching 175 kilometres an hour there very soon, which is also concerning because I reckon we'll see the weather station fail up there if that was the case. Now, going down towards far northern Queensland, or I guess moving across to far northern Queensland, still an awful lot of rainfall moving ashore south of Cairns and Innisfail. I did highlight that Sunday was going to be areas around Cairns and maybe just north of Innisfail, Belen and Kerr, Fishery Falls, that sort of area. That's going to be their rainfall day, and then today, Monday, we're going to see the rainfall move a little bit further south towards Tully, Innisfail, Lucinda and Cardwell, and that is what we're seeing really happen right now on the radar imagery. We're seeing a lot of rainfall come ashore between Cairns and Innisfail from this very slow moving round of thunderstorms, and that's going to keep itself up for the next probably 12 hours or so, and we'll likely be seeing at least a further, at a rough guess, probably about a further 100 millimeters or so fall over the next 24 hours, and then over the next 3 days you're probably going to be looking at rainfall accumulations approaching 400 to 500 millimeters in one spot. Whoa, maybe 700 millimeters as per the Eastern Weather forecast model. I don't think the other forecast models are as bullish. No, the Axis G3 is a little bit more tame, but they're expecting quite a lot of rainfall from this onshore flow, this inflow across the course of Monday and Tuesday, so today and tomorrow, and maybe even a little bit of Wednesday as well for locations between Port Douglas down towards Tully, especially for locations between Cairns and Tully. That's kind of where the bulk of the rainfall will be, especially along the coastline, so you can expect even more flooding to occur down there, on top of the already extreme amount of rainfall that's been occurring in that part of Australia. They've had a very, very wet season, and I keep saying every single video, but it is going to continue this rainfall at least for the next 10 days. In fact, over the next 10 days, with another onshore flow inbound as we get later into this week and into early next week, we could be seeing the rainfall accumulations start to increase there once again. So something that we're going to have to be watching quite closely, and I do believe the Axis G3 is also fond of another tropical cyclone forming in the Gulf of Carpentaria in the next 10 days. Well, they've got something in the Coral Sea, but again, it's too far out to really say with a high degree of certainty, and there's not really much congruency among forecast models. The GFS wants something to occur, but again, very hard to say this far out. It will something that we'll need to be watching, the Coral Sea tropical low. As always, the Coral Sea, we do need to be watching that from November basically through to June, but again, I don't think that's going to spit out another tropical cyclone this cyclone season, especially with how things have gone this cyclone season, being very disappointing in terms of numbers. But yeah, one thing's for sure, we're certainly going to have Tropical Cyclone Megan live up to Category 3 status. I mean, it's a very slow-moving system as well. It isn't actually a big system in terms of area, but it is going to be a system that packs a punch. I feel like just briefly we should also take a look at the West Australian system as well. It's actually looking very healthy this morning by the looks of things. It's got a very nice amount of convection starting to blow up here as the sun rises over it. We'll just see if we can get a loop going. But yeah, it is looking quite healthy for a tropical cyclone at this time, so it's something we're going to have to be watching as well, because it looks like the West Australian region might get its first tropical cyclone of the season, which would be great news there, because I mean, we just haven't had a system, and I'm really looking forward to tracking something for Western Australia, my home state, and hopefully this thing doesn't affect land anymore. But you can already see some nice thunderstorm activity approaching the West Australian coastline, and already some significant winds on Varanus Island, up to 60 kilometres an hour gusting by the looks of things. So yeah, certainly quite strong indeed, and it looks like the rainfall is probably going to pick up as well throughout the rest of today across parts of the Pilbara and maybe the northern parts of the Gascoyne coastline too. So I'll be watching this system closely, and it also does look like it's got a hot chance of becoming a tropical cyclone by this weekend, but again, chances are fading if it doesn't get itself together by around Wednesday or Thursday. But yeah, certainly a system that I'm going to keep my eyes on. Thank you so much for watching this video this morning. If you haven't already, then please do consider subscribing. A special shout out to the channel sponsors, their names on screen. Leave a like on the video too, and give me a weather report for your location in the comment section down below. But thank you so much for the recent support on the channel, and I will catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.